Here we have the statement, if the absolute value of x is equal to 0, then x equals 0. And we want to find values of x that make this statement true. So we think of the absolute value of x as the statement p, and the statement x equals 0 as the statement q. And the whole thing, if the absolute value of x equals 0, then x equals 0, is the statement p implies q. So let's start by writing out our definition of P implies Q. P, Q, P implies Q. Now we want values of x that make this statement true. So we may as well eliminate the rows that make the statement false. And now we see to make the statement true, we either need both P and Q to be true, or we need just P to be false. So as an example of an x that makes this statement true, let's consider x equals 0. In this case, when x equals 0, P is the absolute value of 0 equals 0, which is true. And Q is the statement 0 equals 0, which is also true. So we find ourselves in this situation where both P and Q are true, and so we know that the overall statement, P implies Q, is true. Okay, let's look at another example of an x value that makes the statement true. Let's say x equals -5. Now remember that the absolute value of -5 is equal to 5, and that 5 is not equal to 0. So P, in this case, is that the absolute value of -5 equals 0, which is false. And so we find ourselves in one of these two situations there. It doesn't matter what Q is. And we know that the overall statement, P implies Q, is in fact true. Right, now let's consider a situation, or let's look for values of x that make this statement false. Now to get false, we have to be in this row here. So let's eliminate those other rows. Okay, so we just need an x value that makes the absolute value of x equal to 0, but who is not 0. Okay? So think, what can we put in there? Right. Okay, so if P is true, then that means, so let's say that we could find something to go in there, right? Let's say we could find something to go in there for the question mark. Let's say we could find some x value to make this conditional statement, P implies Q, false. Well, that would mean that it was true that would mean that P is true, right? That would mean that the absolute value of x whatever it was equal to 0, and it would mean that Q is false. So, and X is not 0. So if we could find something to go in right there for that question mark, right? If we could find a number that made this statement false, then that would mean that that number, whatever it is, right, was equal to 0. That would mean that its absolute value was equal to 0, and that number was not 0. Well, this is impossible, right? This is impossible. Because think of an and. An and is true when both statements are true. So if we find something that's not 0, right? If we find something that's not 0, then its absolute value will not be 0. Right? Let's say we chose x equals 4. Well, that satisfies that one, but it doesn't satisfy that one, because the absolute value of x equals 4, the absolute value of 4 is 4. It's not 0. Right? So if we choose anything that's not 0 to satisfy this one here, we're not going to be able to satisfy this one here. And so it's impossible. This is impossible. And so the answer in this case would be none. That's what we'd enter into the box on WebWorks. None.